Well, hello again, YouTube. It's Petey Two Finger, and today I wanted to talk briefly about the LM2596. LM2596 DC to DC converter. Okay, so this is it's a little circuit. There's an DC input and a DC output, and there's an adjuster here. It's a multi-turn trimmer, and there's also a SMT LED power indicator lamp. Now, I've got three of these here. I should have more. I guess I'll open this up. This is another style. I believe it's the same chip. We're going to have to look this up, but here we have, for comparison, you can see that this one it fits in about a quarter, a 25-cent piece or a 50-cent piece for sure. They do give you double holes, which is really very neat. Very nice of them to do that. I believe there is no LED on this unit. And there is the trimmer is this metal. Am I going to be able to get you to see that? Probably not. It's a different style of trim pot, and let me put a piece of paper over the lamp. Try to dull some of the. There's the trimmer, and you can see how they give you double holes. And then on the back, it's very clearly labeled input and output, and it gives you a directional arrow to give you a clue. Now, in working with these, I had one of these fail. I have no idea what I did. I'm sure I reverse polarity'd it or something. They're affordable. These, I believe I was paying around $2 for $1 for them. These units, the ones that have the LED and the multi-turn trimmer, they're a little larger. Those cost 99 cents. Now, they're rated at 3 amps. So let's say you were going to make a power supply or a battery box. Like, let's say you wanted to make your own pedal power supply. You very easily could get some kind of a 24 volt 7 amp like a large power supply that's for some type of a large screen TV. They have those for recliners. They have these chairs that vibrate and move. Those have really high output. So even just a regular old flat panel monitor, you can find 5 amp power supplies. And then what you could do is inside of a chassis, you could set it up with a fuse, a power switch, and then put however many of these as you needed. Like, let's say you really feel that you need 5 individual isolated power taps to run your pedal board, then you would have 5 of these. Okay, and then what you would do is hook up the input on one side, and then on your output you would hook up your multimeter and turn the screw until you got 9.00 volts or 9.06, whatever you want. I typically in the past I did a lot of building amplifiers, and when I do my fingers like that, what I'm meaning by that this is that they're not. When you say guitar amp, you think tube tone machine. These are not that type of thing. It's just a powered speaker. You're getting all of your tone from a Digitech RP80. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. So in order to power the RP80, let's say this amplifier has a sealed lead acid like a tractor battery or a motorcycle battery inside of it to power the power amp. Let's say it's a class D power amp. Okay. Then you would have another, the other part of that circuit would be one of these voltage regulators. This is called a step down or a buck. I used to use a 7809 voltage regulator. Okay, so that's a component. It's about the size of a quarter of a postage stamp with three legs sticking out of it. The middle one's the ground. There's an input and an output. And how it works is I need 9 volts, so I order a 7809. And this passes 1 amp. Okay. So you have your ground, so you would solder 2 wires onto the ground. And then you have your power input. So I have 12 or 14 volts coming in, hitting the input. And what comes out? 9. Now you would strap a couple capacitors across the input and the output, and that's just to eliminate ripple and make it nice and smooth. You would get the 7809, bend up the legs nice to get them to solder all together, because it's 2 capacitors, which that adds up to 1, 2, doubled up for the ground, 3 connections for the capacitors, and then there's usually 2 for the ground, so 1, 2, 3, 4 connections. So it's a lot of connections between the wires, the capacitors, and the voltage regulator coming off the bottom of this thing. So like stuff hanging off and wires. And oftentimes I would wrap tape around it. And then of course it gets hot. So you would need a heat sink. So when you add up the cost, it's 50 cents for the voltage regulator. It's a couple, 10 cents a piece for the capacitors. Then you have a quarter for the heat sink, and then the nut and bolt. So I know I'm counting beans here, but my point is this lm2596 is $1. So it comes out to be the same price. Now, what are the advantages? Well, there's no heat. And I like that a lot. Okay. I really like that. There's no provision for a heat sink. These things don't get hot, and they're adjustable. You can get whatever voltage basically that you want out of it within reason. I mean, there's that 2 voltage gap where your highest number has to be 2 volts lower than your supply voltage. So you got to keep that in mind. But the idea that this is so much easier, it's got 4 large solder pads than doing all this clandestine dead bug stuff, that there's no heat sink, that it's got a LED indicator on it, and it passes 3 amps rather than 1. Like, where do I sign up? So let's go take a look at it, eBay. Let me just make sure that I'm looking at what I want to show you guys. lm2596 DC adjustable buck power supply. Now, as far as any noise goes, these units have the filter caps built in on them. We're doing it the other way. You kind of have to build it all yourself, and you can do this either way. I'm just telling you, I recently discovered these. I switched over. So in adjustment here, voltage adjustment, turn the screw clockwise to increase and counterclockwise to reduce. So you have an input voltage of 3 to 40 volts and an output voltage of 1.5 to 35. It's interesting they're showing that 40 versus 35 like it's a 5 volt dividend, where it really isn't. It's much less than that. But yeah, I really like these guys. You can pay more money for them if you want, and sometimes you can find deals on them. These smaller ones. Let me see if I can find the one. Yeah, here's the one. You can see how they give you two posts to cut in on. And then there's your adjuster. I'm not so hot on this adjuster, but sometimes you're gonna. I'm ran into applications where I wanted to choose this because it's smaller. And the way that I mount these is with a piece of double-sided tape. Super Glue brand double-sided tape is really strong. You get it at the dollar store, and one of those little rectangles is about the same size as this, and it's perfect for mounting that because it's non-conductive and it just takes a second. And if it does ever go bad, believe me, I poke around my stuff from time to time, so I know what's going on. And if it dries out, you know, I'll get rid of it. And here, see, this is the way to do it here. This deal here where you can buy in bulk. Let's see if I want to get 10. Oh, you're paying $1.29 then? How much are they charging for one? Yeah, see, that's. Oh well, this has got an electrolytic capacitor on it though. This doesn't have the surface mount capacitors. So yeah, is different models. These boards get printed and they solder whatever they've got on them, basically. You know, 1 UF solid state capacitors to effectively filter out high frequency noise. Noise. I like that 3 amp though. High efficiency up to 92%. I like that too. Input voltage must be bigger than the output voltage. That's that deficit I was talking about. And you can see, oh well, that's just the operating temperature. But yeah, there isn't even a spot for a heatsink. So, and I think if you were going to put one on there, you would put it there. You know, you could always just use some JB Weld, and they sell these tiny heat sinks. Chinese knockoff. Seems they're putting in whatever capacitor they have laying around. I love that, real capacitors. 220 UF 35 volt, 220 UF 50 volt. Our DC step down. Yeah, it's not the Chinese knockoff. So I just want to let you guys know how much I love these. I bought a couple on a whim because I saw them and I've been using them, and I'm never going back to the 7809. I haven't run into any noise or any issues that would make me squeamish and think, boy, gee, I miss the old 7809s. Although I've got all that stuff. I've got a drawer full of the 78 series or whatever you want to call them, and they're there for me if I need or prefer that. I guess I should mention, at one point I realized, hey, you could do this on a strip of Vero or strip board, and it would come out a lot neater rather than doing it dead bug style of just soldering, bending the capacitor lead, like coming up, going over, and then coming in at an angle like that. Because what I would do is I would take the V-Reg and split the legs apart just to give me more room. So it was more like fanned out like that, and then the capacitors would come in, and you would have the input wire, the output wire, which were always thicker gauges. So you're soldering all this stuff dead bug, and it's just kind of, it's not the best soldering. where stuff is just touching each other. You know, you look at the old stuff, everything goes through a loop and it's all like tied down and then soldered. Like really well done. And when you find yourself doing DIY, often you're just tacking stuff on, you know. So I started doing them on Vero, and you would, you know, end up with a whole contraption with the either mounting it to the chassis and using the chassis as a heat sink, or if you put a heat sink on it, then you've got the bother of, well, how do I mount this thing? More double-sided tape on the bottom and just tack it down. So these boards here, they do have screw holes in them. There's one on each corner on the larger ones. The smaller one doesn't have that. But the blue one, there's the blue one and the green one. That's how I can differentiate. You can, you know, with that, I would use the double-sided tape and affix it. And once it's in there and it's going to stay and the wires are all nice, you go ahead and rip a couple holes and put a couple screws in. And if you're looking for hardware screws, you can look up guitar pick guard screw set. You could pick up a bag of 50 of those screws for 99 cents. Now that COVID happened, it's probably $11.99 and $3.99 shipping for that same bag of screws. But I got 4 of those little bags of screws, which have been responsible for mounting everything in all of my projects for the past like 4 years for 99 cents shipped. So that's another tip for you. Maybe you can look and find a deal on some guitar pick guard screw set, a bag of 50 of them. Maybe you can get that cheap. And maybe you'll check out these lm2596. Everyone chant with me. lm2596. I'm so used to saying 7809 VREG. lm2596 DC buck. And I know I already made a video about this. I wanted to make another because I really do love this circuit. All right, you guys. I finished the, we did a strip board of a Demeter fat control, which is a mid boost. That's got to get boxed up. We did a Obsidious bass preamp, which is a dark glass micro tubes BK3 bass distortion preamp, and we put that in Gomte's bass preamp. Got rid of the DOD 250 and the B blender mixer that I had built. The Thunderbird that I built for my amp is going to get boxed up in a matte black pedal chassis. I got this weird matte black from Tata. So that's going to be just this black Marshall in a box. And boy, that really does sound, as my pal, we'll call him TJ, he said it really does sound like a Marshall. I said I think it's the best sounding distortion box I ever built. And he said, well, it sounds a lot like a Marshall. And it does. So that's going to get boxed up. I've got to box up the Demeter fat control. But the powered mixer is done. And I used a pair of those lm2596. That was the whole purpose of me making this video, was so I can say that and learn it and get it in my head. lm2596. There's a pair of those in the powered mixer. So what I'm doing right now, I am trying to get a 2-track digital recorder for the Duo, so when we go and do these remotes, I can record a decent quality, high quality digital audio file, 2-track, of us playing, and then when I edit the video, that would be a big part of what you hear coming out of your computer speakers is the mixer, the not the monitor mix, off the board mix, Obviously, we've got microphones on the camera, and I could include some of that for ambience and live feel. But, and I was even thinking of ways of doing it, like I could set it up if I can with my board. I don't know if my board is this flexible, or just with cabling, I could, because there's an input and an output. Um, have it so this 2-track recorder just records on one channel her and on one channel me. And then when I edit the video together, I could literally mix. I could get a copy of the drums, put that in, and sync it up. Meaning you match it at the beginning and then you go to the end and then you drag it. You either expand or contract it to make them all line up perfectly. But yeah, I could have complete control. Or just do a stereo mix off the board and bleed that into the final mix. So that's easier said than done unless you have $200 to throw down on a Zoom handy mic, handy quarter, whatever they call it. The Zoom little they've got these $38 executive voice recorders, and they look just like a remote control for a TV. And it's got a little LCD screen, and some of those have a line-in jack. You got to really be careful with that because some of them, that line-in jack, they call it line-in, it's just a mic in. You need to get one that it says it has line-in capability, and that means you go in and change the attenuation of that jack from I'm using an external mic to I'm using line in. You need to make sure that it has that. So they do have some of those units, and I could have just went ahead and ordered it off of eBay and paid the $40 and wait for it to come. But why does life have to be that easy? I'm going to get something that's I'm going to try. So I don't want to talk about that and spoil anything, but that's what I'm working on right now, as well as those other projects. So I've got stuff going on, and I hope you do too. It's always good to have, no matter what it is, repair that old AM radio. Don't throw it out. Tear it apart and then throw it out. Okay, you guys, I hope you had fun with me on this one. I did. I really do love that lm2596. And I'll see you. Hey, if you didn't watch the tornado video, you should check that out. We just had an F4 tornado right here where I live. And
I think it was EF3.
EF3, excuse me. Yeah, it wasn't an F4. It was, they said it was a 2, then the next day they were like, it's a 3. But if you check the video out, you'll see. It was, nobody got killed, but some houses did. That's an interesting video. Check that one out. And I'll see you guys real soon. Take care of yourselves and peace.